How you doing, folks? Ordinary Income back today. Hope you've all been having a great day, great week so far. We got plenty to talk about. In particular, something that came out a little differently. Inflation, usually it comes out, I think like the second or first or second Thursday of the month. This time it came out Tuesday. I don't know why, but it came out either way. And what I found interesting last night was I saw tweets of people mentioning that this exact headline, the White House was expecting inflation to be pretty high in the new report, which already threw some alarms my way because they're taking a huge shift in tone. Before, inflation was a question that we were able to ask politicians and Congress and the government, point to it as being kind of a policy error on their part, saying that you guys have done something to royally jack this up for us. Now the White House is saying, no, it's going to be jacked up, and we have an answer why. And the answer that they're going to be blaming is the war over in Ukraine and Russia. And I think it's pretty dangerous because now every time they're going to be asked about it, most likely they're going to be deflecting over to this answer, saying that if it isn't for international tensions, we wouldn't be having this. They're pretty much going to be blaming everything on international tensions. And with their expectation came no surprise really that the number jumped to 8.5%, pretty much the highest in 40 years. And their expectations were met in this case. We do have crazy inflation. Not only do we have crazy inflation, but now we've seen another tone change, and that is that a lot of people have focused on core inflation. What is core inflation? Core inflation, and I can add in something right here that'll show, but core inflation is pretty much looking at inflation without looking at food and without looking at energy in particular. Yeah, food and energy. The reason being is that those two things fluctuate a lot. Food in particular could have an increased cost because there might be a famine or there might be some climate issues. Could be a storm that comes by, or could be even lack of rain that interrupts the crops and their harvesting season, which thus will decrease supply, thus increasing demand, and price will go higher. Oil is usually impacted by international tensions and all that as well, international negotiations, so that sees a huge spike. So core inflation is taking out the things that are going to be fluctuating due to outside economic factors, so to say. The only problem with now people focusing on core inflation, because it came in lower, I think. It came in lower than estimates, in particular inflation without food and energy. The only problem is that people fill up their gas tank a bunch. We're reliant upon energy, and food is the next. I mean, they're 1 and 2, I'd probably say. Food, shelter, and energy are the things we need. When you're taking out two of the biggest impacts to people's wallets, it becomes pretty stupid, and it seems like you're kind of just making crap up, in my opinion at least. I don't think it's a good use for you to be taking out the things that people are spending the most money on. And we got a little bit more proof right here. If we look at US CPI, core price index just for food alone is seeing ridiculously higher levels, worse than was in 2008 and the global financial crisis as well. We're seeing just numbers that are ridiculous. But not even just looking at core inflation, a lot of people have also mentioned that the CPI print in and of itself is incorrect. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is with shelter. Shelter was included, but we can see that, I think in this tweet, it said shelter only went up 5% year over year. And the idea is that can't be right because real estate prices are up 20%, while rents are up 15%. So both areas in which shelter is included have double-digit increases, but shelter as a category only went up by 5%. And as I've said before, CPI is kind of like an egg with a lot of things involved, a basket of goods pretty much. And in those basket of goods, there's even subsections. So within shelter, there's subsections of your rent, your owning, possibly taxes on HOA dues and all that stuff. But there's more than just this. However, rent and the cost of a house are the two biggest things. So to think that everything else didn't see such an astronomical increase that it could take these two big areas all the way down to 5% is it's hard to believe, so to say. But the point with this is it's very interesting that they're able to receive kind of their golden goose, their biggest scapegoat, that they can all pass this over to inflation. They can say food inflation is because of international affairs because we import a lot. Energy inflation is the same. Housing you can't really pass up, but they're probably going to because they're just going to group it in. Nevertheless, I think it's just a storm of many storms colliding together. That you have the idea of ridiculously high inflation for people. Wages has not met that. People are getting priced out of homes. Food is tough to purchase. Gasoline is ridiculously high right now too. On top of the fact that we're not buying these numbers, and now what they've been able to do, and in terms of game theory, it's pretty brilliantly, is flip the table. Instead of them being the ones that have to take the questions and take the beating, they can pass off and say, no, we have our answer. It's because of what's going on overseas. And if that's able to stop, then what we can do is we'll have lesser inflation. We'll be able to return back to normalized prices. But until that's not stopped, nothing's going to happen. So we can kind of paint an enemy out of one particular country. I'm not saying whether you should or shouldn't, but I think it's just a stupid answer. I think it's a scapegoat way of going about it, because this inflation has been occurring prior. I think this inflation really started December 2020. And it went all through 2021. It's gone through the beginning of 2022. And to really just point into one area is lazy, but they have no other answers, and they're not going to say bad policy. What does this mean for the consumer? What does it all mean that there's a different answer they're going to give, that you have rising prices? Well, it means exactly that. It means that things are still going to become expensive. The good news is the job market is even better than it was maybe when we've had unemployment this low. So if you're a consumer and saying, how can I at least maintain this or anything like that, I would say the best thing to do is, seeing that for every person unemployed, there's 2 jobs, 2 companies at least trying to hire that one person. And in other areas, it's 3 or 4. There's a great chance to be able to at least try to fight this by getting a new job, looking for pay increases. Great resignation is occurring mainly because people realize when you switch jobs, you can get a 30% increase rather than that 7 to 12% increase at your current job. So I would say that's the biggest thing, is if you're the individual consumer trying to figure out how can I at least somewhat battle inflation, gain the skills, put in the time to acquire certain skills that companies are looking for, apply to new jobs, and look for new hirings that you'll be able to negotiate a stronger salary to get that 30% increase in your salary, to at least try to fight this off. I'd say there's many ways to, there's also side jobs as well that are hiring. I know anything of the gig economy is seeing elevated or decreased actually workers, mainly because things like Uber, DoorDash, Instacart are reliant on gas prices. And so there are some areas that if you scope out your area well, if you're able to do the research, you could make, a decent amount of side money driving around delivering people food. But that's what it means for consumers, is that you're gonna have to find interesting ways sometimes to either make it up or look for ways to get a new job and a new pay. And I think at the base of that is there's a lot of pressure now on individuals pretty much acquiring more skills, becoming more valuable, so you can make this money. As much as it sucks to say that a lot of this inflation, I think, is policy error, the solution is going to be on your end, so to say. But that's just a quick video I want to do inflation, that the numbers are coming out, who the blame is going to be put on, how accurate the numbers look like, and the different ways that they're spinning stories as well. So let me know if you have any questions. I ran through this kind of quickly. I'll leave all the links to the stuff I'm showing, and I hope, hopefully we're able to see decrease, but I don't know. Just keep in mind that even if inflation starts to decrease to instead of 8.5%, it's 7%, most likely they're going to be championing that it went down. However, 7% year-over-year return means that prices in that month were 7% higher than last month, which is still a ridiculously high level. So there's many ways that narratives are going to be shifting, many ways that answers are going to be given. Just keep an eye out. I think at this point, it's up to the consumer to pretty much do the things they can for themselves to become more valuable in the job market, to be able to take advantage of what's out there. So I hate to be bleak on you guys, but that's just kind of how it is, and there's no other ways around it. Hope you all enjoy, have a great time, and we'll be back tomorrow with some more content.